In Laredo, Texas, on June 16, 2026, a private jet carrying 6 people declared an emergency after experiencing mechanical problems before crashing onto a highway.
Oh my gosh, Cassandra! Oh my gosh!
There's people in there. No sé. Oh my God. Dale. ¿Lo agarraron? Ah, no, sí se metió.
According to authorities, 1 person on board did not survive, while 5 others were injured. In a separate incident in Mardan, Pakistan, a military training aircraft crashed onto a road during a training exercise. Officials said both pilots lost their lives and 3 civilians were injured. Investigators have been launched into both crashes. For the victims, their families, and everyone affected, these tragedies serve as heartbreaking reminders of how quickly lives can change in an instant. Keep watching, because our next case is even more disturbing. On April 1, 2009, a YouTube channel operating under the name Bobby Joe Blay 007 uploaded a video titled Jesus Taught Me. The footage was visibly old, blurry, degraded, transferred from VHS tape to digital, and clearly recorded during a different era entirely. Whatever it had originally been made for, uploading it to YouTube decades later was not the original intention.
Taken on 13 December 1984, about 7 p.m.
For the first several weeks after the upload, the video attracted almost no attention and sat with a negligible view count. When it eventually surfaced on martial arts forums, it spread rapidly and became one of the most broadly circulated and disturbing pieces of footage to appear online. The setting was a small karate dojo in Dumfries, Virginia. At some point before the recording began, a thin, soft-spoken man had walked in off the street and told those present that he had received his martial arts training directly from Jesus Christ. He had come, by his own account, to demonstrate what that training consisted of.
This guy, like I say, he's a priest. He's a 10th degree red belt. And who'd you say promoted you to 10th degree red belt? Jesus did. Okay.
A claim of that kind made clear the man wasn't operating from a standard state of mind, but he didn't present as threatening. He stated explicitly, and more than once, that he had no interest in hurting anyone in the room. His stated intention was only to demonstrate, nothing more.
I won't brag or anything of that nature, but I can demonstrate. Okay, demonstrate on him. Well, I won't demonstrate on him. I will demonstrate around him.
2 other men were visible in the frame, the owner of the dojo and one of his students. Both were United States Marines. After the man explained himself, the owner directed the student to stand facing him. Despite the man continuing to repeat that he only wanted to show something and not to fight, violence began almost immediately. As he attempted to step back and put space between himself and the student, the attacks continued. The owner observed and did not intervene.
Don't do that anymore. No, just don't do that. Good. I'm not a fighter.
What followed escalated until the man was down on the floor, badly injured and barely responsive. The owner told those present to drag him out. The camera then panned to the floor of the dojo, where a trail of blood extended toward the exit. The description beneath the video stated that the man was subsequently found by police inside a dumpster behind the building, language that strongly implied he hadn't survived, attributed to that description. Neither the footage itself nor the written description produced a definitive answer about what had actually happened to him, and that unresolved outcome was a central reason the clip kept circulating and kept generating investigation long after it first spread. Once it reached wider audiences on martial arts forums, efforts began to identify where the footage had come from and who was visible in it. The channel name provided the first real lead, eventually tracing back to Bobby Joe Blay, a former U.S. Marine who appeared to be the same individual giving commands in the video. The dojo had operated as a storefront in a shopping center in Dumfries, Virginia, but had been closed for years by the time the footage went online. That combination produced a question that nobody has answered convincingly. If the footage showed a criminal assault, why would the person apparently responsible post it to YouTube under his own channel name? Years after the fact, reviewing the other content Bobby had uploaded gave some window into the kind of authority he believed he held and how he appeared to understand events like the one shown in the video.
Don't tolerate this from nobody in our domain. We black belts, this is our place. We can do what we want anytime we feel like it, and feel free as anybody could be in this world, in this place. And in your place, this is yours. This is your dojo. No one treads on your territory. We can do anything we want. Just do it. We're liberal. If they come through that door, it's open season.
Investigators online also noted the specific language in the description, the claim about the dumpster, which was precise enough in principle to be checked, yet produced nothing verifiable in practice, and became its own focal point in the ongoing effort to understand what the footage actually documented. When people sent the footage to local law enforcement, Captain Ronald Mackey of the Dumfries Police Department released a statement indicating the victim had survived and had been interviewed by officers at the time of the incident, attributed to Mackey. That statement appeared to close the central question. It didn't hold up to scrutiny. Retired police detective Chuck Feldbush also stated the man had lived through the assault, but the investigation Feldbush described was considerably less thorough than what Mackey's statement had implied. Feldbush said he had personal familiarity with both Bobby and the victim, describing the latter as a homeless man who had been living in wooded land in the vicinity of the dojo. His account included a direct statement. You could tell he had been beaten severely, but he wasn't very cooperative and didn't want to pursue charges. If that account reflects how the matter was actually handled, it means no genuine inquiry into what the footage documents was ever conducted. It also means the claim that the victim survived cannot be supported by any verifiable record. A man in those circumstances, severely injured from a documented assault, appearing to be experiencing a serious mental health crisis, homeless, and unwilling to engage with law enforcement, could have died from injuries that went untreated in the days or weeks following the incident without producing any documentation that would surface in a search. None of the officers involved could remember his name. Hospital records from the surrounding area don't correspond to the described circumstances. Missing person reports from the relevant period don't match the description or timeline. Every avenue of verification leads to the same point of closure. According to several sources, the dojo may have drawn a clientele that extended beyond standard martial arts students. Bobby's background as a Marine reportedly attracting bodyguards, active and former service members, and possibly people connected to law enforcement, attributed to those sources. If accurate, that detail could simultaneously explain two things about how the case unfolded: the notably understated quality of the official response when the footage went public, and the apparent confidence with which Bobby posted the video under his own name without appearing to anticipate consequences. If the people in a position to investigate already had established ties to Bobby prior to any investigation, that would offer a structural reason why nothing actionable emerged from the official process. There is, however, no direct evidence that any official made a deliberate choice to suppress the matter, and nothing confirmed in the public record establishes that Bobby received any formal protection. Without the victim being identified, without a name that can be followed, a hospital record, a confirmed later encounter, or any document that places him somewhere after he was removed from that dojo. Every theory about his fate and about the response from those in authority remains unverifiable in either direction. 2 decades of sustained online investigation, carried out by large numbers of people working through every visible detail of the footage and every traceable connection to the people in it, have produced no meaningful development. The case remains suspended between 2 possibilities that the available record cannot resolve. The man survived and disappeared back into circumstances that placed him entirely beyond the reach of anyone looking for him. Or the footage captured something that extended beyond an assault, and the people with the authority to pursue it chose not to. On June 13, 2026, a military transport aircraft in Jorhat, India, veered off the runway while landing before erupting into flames. Authorities confirmed that all 5 military personnel on board lost their lives in the crash. Heavy rain in Aceiras, Brazil, caused a large crater to suddenly form on a roadway in the early morning. Local reports said a car and 2 motorcycles ended up falling into the hole. 6 people were affected in total, with 5 suffering minor injuries and 1 person losing their life. May 1st, 2015 was supposed to be a celebration. Jiajiang Pingyang Amusement Park in China was opening its doors for the first time, and one of its headline attractions was a new ride called The Scream, a 10-meter booster designed to launch riders into the air at high speed and spin them through the cycle. At around 12:05 p.m., with passengers still in the process of boarding, something went wrong before the ride had even properly started. According to riders, a sudden jolt hit the group before every safety harness had finished locking into position, attributed to their accounts. The ride's electric motor was exposed on the structure and operated by a manual lever rather than an automated system. Someone activated it too early. 5 people were thrown from their seats while still in the process of being secured to the ride.
People were killed after being thrown from a brand new ride at an amusement park in China on Friday.
2 of them died from the impact of the fall. 1 was 18 years old. 3 others sustained critical injuries. The investigation into what happened revealed how unsafe the attraction had been well before the park's opening day. The ride reportedly had no sensors capable of detecting whether the restraints were fully secured, no programmed sequence to prevent the motor from firing before boarding was complete, and no reliable fail-safe to catch an operator error, both reportedly qualifiers preserved. The entire safety model relied on manual checks carried out by staff. Those staff members had not been given proper training to handle equipment that was already carrying significant concerns. The issues weren't limited to a single faulty ride either. The park itself had been operating without the required permits in place. The Scream had reportedly come from a manufacturer with no license and a track record of bypassing safety requirements. By the time the public was boarding, they were sitting on a ride that should have never been installed, operated by a park that had no legal authorization to open.
Said the staff may have started the ride before the tourists had a chance to buckle their safety belts.
The Scream had been running for less than 5 minutes when it was shut down permanently. Authorities closed the park within hours and detained the owner as part of a criminal investigation. The site was demolished by 2018. What makes this case so disturbing is how straightforward the failure was. The riders hadn't done anything wrong. They were still in the process of sitting down when the motor activated. A properly engineered ride cannot move until every restraint is confirmed locked. That basic protection was simply absent from the Scream, and the consequences arrived before the ride had even completed its first full minute of operation. Around mid-2020, a comment appeared beneath a Pink Floyd Instagram post from a user called KickLamar22. Most people scrolling past it would have clocked it as spam and kept moving. The comment read, "Help me, I'm an artist, I'm in trouble. I discovered a cannibalism restaurant here in Brazil. Now there is an agency of espionage torturing me. My parents were kidnapped. Can you save me, please? I'm suffering." What separated it from ordinary spam was what appeared directly beneath the message: his full legal name, a contact number, his complete home address, the physical location of the restaurant he was describing, its email address, and a working link to its website. On the surface read, "That profile in detail looks like an elaborate attention grab or a badly executed joke." But when people clicked through to the account behind the comment, the situation shifted. His Instagram was filled with posts repeating the same accusation across dozens of separate uploads, each one addressed to strangers and asking for intervention before something worse happened. Several included legal documents belonging to him and to his parents, posted apparently as a way of establishing that the people at the center of his story were real. The pattern wasn't limited to Instagram. His Facebook and X accounts contained the same material, and the archive extended at least to 2018. According to people who had been tracking his online behavior over time, he had also been sending the same appeals directly to individuals in private messages for close to 2 years. An art account connected to him contributed an additional dimension. Dark drawings uploaded with captions invoking phrases like "destroy fascism" and "socialism is fascism," with references to the same cannibal restaurant appearing alongside the imagery with regularity. The first theory that gained traction when the case started circulating online was that the whole thing was an ARG, an alternate reality game. ARGs are a form of interactive fiction in which a creator builds a story across real-world platforms, using social media accounts and websites as fragments of a larger designed narrative. Under that framework, Kick's posts could be read as an art project that started with his drawings and expanded outward into something constructed to sit uncomfortably on the boundary between fiction and reality. That interpretation had a significant structural problem. ARGs are built around puzzles with solutions and narratives with payoffs. Neither existed here. There was no thread leading somewhere, no reveal waiting for anyone who dug deep enough. What existed was the same accusation, repeated across years, with a level of apparent conviction that made performance seem like a less compelling explanation than genuine belief. The phrase "cannibalism restaurant in Brazil" is a kind of claim that reads immediately as fabricated. It's worth noting that in 2012, 3 people were arrested in Guaranães, in the Brazilian state of Pernambuco, following a police investigation into the murders of at least 2 women. According to police, those responsible had consumed portions of their victims' remains and incorporated the rest into stuffed meat pies that were then sold to customers with no knowledge of what they were purchasing. Those products were distributed to schools and hospitals. The 2012 Guaranães case had no documented connection to anything Kick described, but it meant the category of event he was referencing wasn't without precedent in the country he was writing from. The fundamental evidentiary problem with Kick's account remained constant. Nothing he produced confirmed what he was claiming. When people attempted to engage him directly, the exchanges didn't generate additional information. A Reddit user who contacted him about the espionage element received fragmented responses. "They're torturing me. It's an evil organization. It's because they're evil." Every attempt to draw out more specifics returned to the same small cluster of phrases. The distress was legible in the messages. A coherent account wasn't. That made the website link, the single piece of checkable concrete information he attached to every post, more significant than it might initially appear. When followed, the link resolved to a hospice and rehabilitation center. Entering the address into Google Maps identified the location as Baramed Support House, a medical facility. Street view showed an ordinary building. The Google reviews described the place in terms consistent with any care facility. Patients and families commenting on staff quality and the standard of treatment attributed to those reviews. None of it bore any resemblance to what Kik had been describing. That detail fundamentally reoriented the mystery. One theory that followed from the website discovery, Kik may have been a patient at the facility at some point, and a severe paranoid psychosis could have caused him to perceive the medical environment around him as threatening rather than supportive. The horror in his posts under this reading existed in his interpretation of his immediate surroundings, not in the surroundings themselves. That would account for the complete absence of verifiable evidence and for the genuine quality of distress present throughout his messages. The difficulty with this theory is that Baramid's own website doesn't describe it as a psychiatric care facility. Its services appear to be oriented primarily toward elderly patients, which makes a scenario in which Kik was admitted there as a psychiatric patient more difficult to establish. A pattern visible across Kik's posts, though not widely highlighted in coverage of the case, is that two elements appeared together in almost every message: the cannibalism restaurant and the claim that his parents had been kidnapped. In some of his most distressed uploads, he posted his mother's government-issued identity card. At first reading, that seems like an odd choice. No one questioning the story was disputing whether his mother was a real person. Baramid, though, is a continuing care facility, the kind of institution where families admit elderly relatives for long-term residential treatment. If Kik's parents had been placed there by other family members and he had not been told or had not accepted what that decision meant, the framework he constructed around the situation starts to look different. Under that reading, his parents hadn't entered a care facility. They had been taken somewhere against their will. The people responsible for their care weren't medical professionals. They were the agency tormenting him. That would explain why the same address appeared in hundreds of separate posts over 2 years. It would explain why attempts to get a clear account of the situation from him went nowhere. And it would explain why he uploaded his mother's identity card publicly. He believed she had been taken, and he was trying to show anyone who would look that she was real and that no one was helping. Both theories depend on the same foundation, that Kik was experiencing severe paranoia, significant enough to transform something ordinary, a care facility, possibly one where his own family members were living, into something he experienced as genuinely dangerous. At some point after the case began circulating online, all of his accounts went dark. The most plausible explanation is that someone in his life was made aware of the situation and intervened in some way. That hasn't been confirmed by any public account. No resolution to the case has surfaced until Kik himself becomes findable again, or someone with direct knowledge of the situation speaks on the record. The case remains exactly where it has been, open, unresolved, and without a confirmed explanation. What do you make of this case? Let me know in the comments down below, and let's dive into the next disturbing case. Marco Simoncelli was a kind of MotoGP rider you couldn't take your eyes off. Aggressive, fearless, and riding with a confidence that set him apart from almost everyone on the grid. Fans were drawn to that quality, and it made him one of the most compelling figures in the sport. On October 23, 2011, at the Malaysian Grand Prix in Sepang, that same race meeting would become one of the most devastating days the sport had seen in years. Simoncelli was running near the front of the pack when he hit turn 11, a right-hand corner that feeds out onto a long straight. For a moment, what unfolded looked like a standard racing incident. His bike lost grip and started going wide, and for just a second it seemed like he was going to slide off the racing line without taking anyone with him. Then the bike bit back into the tarmac. Instead of drifting away, it snapped hard across the track and dragged Simoncelli straight into the line of the riders behind him. Colin Edwards and Valentino Rossi were coming through that same corner with no room and no time. At those speeds, with that distance between them, there was nothing either rider could do. Contact was inevitable.
Crash occurred to him during the race. He was hit by other riders, and he reported very important trauma to the head, to the neck, and to the chest. When our medical staff arrived on him, he was unconscious. We thought to help him as long as we thought it was possible.
Simoncelli was hit by the riders behind him, and the consequences were immediate. The race was red flagged almost as soon as it happened, with medical crews moving onto the circuit within moments. A MotoGP race weekend had shifted into something else entirely in the span of a few seconds. One lap he was battling for track position in the early stages of a world championship round. Then he was lying still on the circuit while everyone around him, riders, officials, fans watching at home, tried to make sense of what they had just witnessed. The medical team worked on him at the scene before he was taken to the circuit's medical center, but the damage was too severe. Less than an hour after the crash, Marco Simoncelli was pronounced dead.
2011 happened the crash of Marco. Was very bad feeling for everybody because it was our friend, you know. When I go back and I see the image of the crash in the television, and I say, he's
He was 24 years old. The announcement hit the racing world hard. Riders, teams, and supporters from across the sport came forward to honor him, not just as a competitor, but as someone whose personality and raw passion had left a mark that went beyond results.
56, 2 weeks ago at Sepang in Malaysia, we lost a true gladiator in the MotoGP World Championships.
Every single one of them is out there.
It's a very close knit family travelling the world together, and when they lose one of their favourite sons, everybody mourns.
His number 58 became something more than a race number after that day. It carried the weight of everything he stood for on a bike. What makes this footage so disturbing isn't only the violence of the collision, it's that it happened in an environment where every rider has accepted the risk, and yet watching the line between control and catastrophe disappear in a fraction of a second still stops you cold. Simoncelli's legacy has endured in MotoGP, bold and passionate, completely committed to the sport. A rider who went after every corner like it was his last, and whose career ended in front of the entire world during the race he had given everything to compete in. On June 26, 2016, families arrived at M&D's theme park in Motherwell, Scotland for a summer afternoon out. Kids on rides, parents waiting at the barriers, the ambient noise of a park in full operation. Dominating the skyline of the park was a coaster called Tsunami, Scotland's only inverted roller coaster, with riders suspended below the track, legs hanging freely as the train twisted through corners and drops at speed. It had been one of the park's headline attractions for years and was regularly promoted as the park's biggest thrill. That afternoon, as the train came around a bend, 5 cars separated from the track. The coaster struck part of its own support structure and fell nearly 20 feet. The wreckage landed inverted, coming down directly onto a children's ride positioned below. What had been a busy, loud, ordinary summer park changed in a matter of seconds. Parents started running. Children screamed. People standing nearby turned toward the impact and saw the coaster lying on the ground in a place it could never have been designed to reach. One person who had ridden Tsunami just minutes before the crash described the scene as something out of a horror film, attributed to the witness. Bystanders and emergency responders moved in immediately. A number of the injured were still locked into their seats inside the wreckage, and rescue workers had to navigate around bent metal to get them free. 10 people were taken to hospital in total, including 8 children. A 12-year-old girl sustained critical head injuries. Several others required treatment for serious trauma from a ride failure that arrived without any warning whatsoever. The crash was disturbing enough on its own terms. What made it harder still to sit with was the context surrounding it. In 2011, 9 riders had been stranded roughly 60 feet in the air on the same coaster after the lift chain snapped. They remained up there for hours before rescue teams could bring them down safely. Then only months before the 2016 crash, a separate attraction at the park broke down while in midair and required a firefighter call-out. When investigators examined Tsunami in the aftermath of the crash, they found that the coaster had previously been repaired using the wrong type of welding material, and that this error contributed directly to the failure, attributed to the investigators. The accident was not some unforeseeable structural event. It traced back to repair work that had not been done correctly. In 2019, the park's owners admitted to health and safety failures and were fined £65,000. The ride itself had already been dismantled and removed from the site by then. A roller coaster is engineered to simulate danger while keeping the rider entirely safe. The speed, the drops, the inversions, all of it exists within a controlled envelope. At M&D's that afternoon, the envelope was gone. Adventureland Park's Raging River ride had been running as a family attraction since 1983. The format was a familiar one: large circular rafts carrying groups of passengers through a concrete water channel, bumping and spinning through a course designed to feel out of control while remaining tightly managed. On July 3, 2021, that management failed. A mechanical fault in the ride's pumping system produced water conditions inside the trough that were outside normal operating parameters. The current ran faster and less predictably than the ride's design specified, and the rafts were moving through water that was no longer behaving as the attraction intended. One family encountered the worst section of those conditions. The raft entered a curved portion of the channel and water began entering the vessel. The air bladder sections that were supposed to give the raft buoyancy and structure had already been compromised before they reached that point. As the raft made contact with the channel walls, controlling its movement became increasingly difficult. It collided with the concrete sides of the trough multiple times before flipping over completely. Several family members managed to get free, but 11-year-old Michael and 15-year-old David Jr. were caught underneath the overturned raft, still restrained in their seats, submerged beneath the water. The operator stationed near the ride's endpoint did not have a clear sightline to the overturned raft from their position. Park staff activated the emergency stop system, which was also designed to drain the trough rapidly, but that system failed as well. The water remained in the channel. Bystanders and off-duty emergency workers entered the ride to help, and for several minutes, people worked to lift the raft off the two boys. First responders coming from the park entrance had to run hundreds of yards to reach the scene, and every second of that distance mattered. Michael died the following day from drowning-related injuries. David Jr. survived, but only after spending weeks in a medically induced coma, and he was left with permanent neurological damage as a result. Investigators identified multiple safety violations, problems with the drainage system, defects in the raft itself, and maintenance issues that should have been identified and corrected before the ride was operated that day, attributed to investigators. In the hours, internal records confirmed that maintenance personnel had worked specifically on the same raft's air bladders in the hours immediately before the incident. The raging river ride was closed permanently following the accident. Part of what draws people to a rapids ride is the feeling of being at the edge of control, the spinning, the splashing, the uncertainty about which wall you're gonna bounce off next. That sensation is supposed to exist within a system that keeps every rider safe, regardless of how chaotic it feels. On July 3, 2021, that system failed at every level simultaneously, and a ride that had been operating for nearly 4 decades became something 2 members of one family could not get out of alive and intact. On June 16, 2016, a security guard working a shift at a bank management building in Utah picked up something on an old radio that would go on to become one of the more genuinely unsettling pieces of audio to circulate online in recent years. The guard's name was Cody Erickson. Inside the security office sat an AM/FM radio belonging to his supervisor. Old hardware, nothing unusual about it. With his assigned tasks completed and the next guard not yet in to relieve him, Cody started scanning through the AM stations to occupy the remaining time. Late night AM in Utah produces what you'd expect. Sports programming, music from an earlier era, static between. Somewhere between a sports station and an old music channel on either side of the dial, something different came through, a woman crying. He adjusted the dial repeatedly, trying to hold the signal. Each movement either collapsed the broadcast into static or let a neighboring station cover it entirely. What came through in the intervals was disturbing enough that he took out his phone and began recording. In the audio, the woman's voice sounded like someone in the middle of pleading with another person, asking whoever was present to leave her alone. At one point, she mentioned 2 children. The signal continued moving in and out throughout the duration of the recording, her voice rising and falling beneath the interference. At the end, the static broke just long enough for a second voice to come through and say something.
Hardness of heart.
Most of those who listened to the recording heard the same phrase, rip her apart.
Hardness of heart.
After the broadcast went silent, Cody scanned the same stretch of the AM dial twice each night over the following days, looking for the signal to return. It didn't. Left with an audio recording he couldn't explain and no source to connect it to, he uploaded it to YouTube, hoping someone in the wider online community might be able to identify its origin. The theories that developed covered a reasonable range. The first and the least unsettling, if accurate, was that what Cody had picked up was simply a scripted performance. AM radio doesn't behave with the predictability of FM. Depending on geography, time, and atmospheric conditions, an AM receiver can pull in broadcasts from long distances, including material from archived horror drama serials and detective programs. Under this reading, Cody had turned into the middle of a fictional audio scene, and the signal's degradation had transformed a performed piece into something that felt too immediate and unscripted to dismiss easily. Another theory pointed to drive-in movie theaters, which commonly transmit film audio over short-range radio frequencies for car speakers, and that transmission can drift onto adjacent bands. If a horror film happened to be playing at an outdoor venue within range, what Cody recorded might have been a scene's most intense moment bleeding from a nearby transmitter, rather than anything connected to real people. Both explanations fit within the technically possible. Both hit the same wall when tested against the specifics. Across the years since the recording was posted online, no piece of identifiable media, no film, radio drama, audiobook, or archived broadcast has been connected to the phrases audible in the clip. The drive-in theory comes with an additional complication. Most contemporary outdoor theaters direct audiences to FM frequencies specifically, not the AM band Cody was using that night. The general framework exists. The specific content that would confirm it has not been found, despite significant online effort to locate it. The deeper problem with the performance theory was the quality of the crying itself. People who listened to the recording constantly noted that it didn't carry the structural markers of performed distress. No clean emotional arc, no sense of hitting a scripted beat, no rhythm as someone waiting for a cue. It sounded irregular and fragmented in the way that real distress sounds when it isn't being shaped for an audience. One Reddit user proposed an alternative. The audio may have come from a call-in program, potentially a church-affiliated line or a counseling broadcast, where a woman was describing something that had already happened to her rather than something being recorded around her. Under this reading, the final phrase was also misheard. 4 years apart rather than rip her apart, a phrase that would sit naturally within a conversation about grief, family separation, or trauma. Without identifying the program, that theory remains impossible to verify, sitting in the same unconfirmed space as every other explanation. The possibility that the audio was never a broadcast at all, that it was a stray signal from a baby monitor or wireless security camera in a nearby property that Cody's radio accidentally intercepted, cannot be dismissed on technical grounds. Older monitors and wireless cameras of the type common during that period transmitted on frequencies that AM receivers in close proximity could accidentally pick up. 2 documented cases confirm that this kind of accidental cross-reception has surfaced serious situations playing out inside private homes. In Milwaukee in February 2004, a man who had recently installed the wireless security camera was cycling through his own feeds when his receiver locked onto a signal from a different property. The feed showed 2 young girls with arms raised, while a woman appeared to be hitting them. Law enforcement confirmed the receiver had most likely been picking up a cross signal from a camera operating within approximately 75 to 150 feet. In the Czech Republic in 2007, a father using a video monitor to watch his infant had his device pick up a stray signal from a neighboring house. The feed showed a young boy lying bound on a bare floor. After the father contacted authorities, police traced the signal to a nearby address where the child was found restrained with duct tape, severely dehydrated, and being monitored by a camera. Both cases are confirmed in the public record. Both demonstrate that a receiver inadvertently intercepting a live feed from inside another home, and that feed showing something requiring immediate intervention is not a theoretical scenario. It has happened in documented circumstances. Given those precedents, the possibility that Cody's radio picked up a live signal from a monitor or camera operating somewhere within physical range of the building cannot be set aside. If that's what happened, what he recorded was not performance or entertainment content of any kind. It was something occurring in real time inside a nearby residence. Domestic violence or something beyond that. reaching his radio receiver while he sat in his security office in the middle of the night. No confirmed source for the audio has ever emerged. The recording runs approximately 2 minutes. It was captured on a phone from an old AM radio in a quiet office in Utah in 2016 by a guard who was just trying to pass the time until his shift ended. Whether the origin is a piece of fiction that simply hasn't been matched to a specific broadcast, a misheard call-in program, or a live feed from somewhere it was never meant to travel, the source remains unidentified. Without it, the recording sits exactly where it has since the day Cody uploaded it, a 2-minute open question with no confirmed answer. Mobile phone footage from MYUU Park in China starts the way most amusement park clips do, a group of young riders in a spinning attraction, the ride moving the atmosphere of light. The ride was called Travel Through Space, built to flip passengers upside down through a full 360-degree rotation at speed. It looked like any other high-energy park ride. Bright colors, fast movement, teenagers enjoying themselves, but the footage captured in the seconds that followed was something entirely different. 13-year-old Gong Yanji was among the riders. As the ride went into its rotation, the restraint system holding her in place gave way. The seatbelt failed to keep her body secured, and the overhead safety bar had left enough clearance for her to slip through it. She was thrown from the ride and struck the iron railings below while the other passengers screamed around her. The ride was supposed to have 2 independent safety mechanisms working together, a waist belt and an overhead bar, each designed to back the other up. According to investigators, the belt gave out during the rotation and the bar's positioning left a gap that turned out to be fatal, attributed to investigators. Staff working at the park that day had not caught the problem before the ride opened. According to reports, Gong's 9-year-old cousin had also been permitted to board the attraction, despite age restrictions being in place. Once the footage circulated across Chinese social media, the response was immediate. State media broadcast the clip, and officials disclosed that while the ride had cleared a safety inspection in December 2016, the record showed no significant updates to the equipment going back to 2013. Gong was her parents' only child. Within 48 hours of the accident, the family accepted a compensation settlement of 870,000 yen, approximately $126,700. The park was shut down by authorities. Travel through space rides were suspended across the country, and the manufacturer was ordered to carry out emergency checks on all units. The public response went beyond grief. This was reportedly not the first time riders had been thrown from similar attractions. That hedge preserved. For the people watching the footage, the central question wasn't only about how the restraint failed, it was about how a ride with 2 safety systems, a recent inspection on record, and a park full of staff managed to put a 13-year-old girl in a position where neither of those systems did what they existed to do. On May 1, 1995, a University of Arizona student named Brian Hance was reading through his campus newspaper, the Arizona Daily Wildcat, when something on page 16 stopped him. The page was a full-page spread filled with mathematical symbols, scientific notations, and historical references, centered on an image of Martin Luther surrounded by formulas and cryptic diagrams. The heading at the top read simply May Day 1995. Brian's initial assumption was that it was some kind of recruitment material, a fraternity invitation, maybe, or an appeal from a campus organization that operated below the surface of official university life. That assumption didn't survive contact with what he found over the following 2 years. Every year, a new version of the same kind of advertisement appeared in the paper. Each one blended mathematics with maps, biblical passages, historical figures, scientific diagrams, and fragments in multiple languages: Latin, Greek, Hebrew, German, and others. Some included musical notation alongside the text. Others contained hand-drawn illustrations or made references to specific philosophers, theologians, and pivotal moments in recorded history. The pages looked different from one year to the next, but they carried the same unmistakable internal register. By 1997, Brian had taken on the role of web administrator for the Wildcat, which gave him direct access to the paper's full archive going back decades. He spent days working through old issues in sequence. What he found pulled the situation in a direction he hadn't anticipated. The cryptic full-page advertisements weren't something that had started recently. Similar messages stretched back into the early 1980s, predating his arrival at the university by years. And despite having appeared in print across that entire span of time, nobody currently working at the Wildcat knew who was behind them. The advertisements had always been submitted through a lawyer, with no further identification attached. The real author had been completely anonymous from the start. Brian built a website, mayday.org, and began assembling every page from the archive he could locate, operating on the premise that enough collected material, viewed by enough people, might eventually allow someone to decode what it contained. Working through the archive over time, certain elements kept returning across different years and different visual layouts. A hand-drawn figure appeared across multiple advertisements, a small smirking man, 2 dots for eyes, an expression that sat somewhere between knowing and self-satisfied. It carried the quality of a deliberate signature, placed there consistently enough to function as a recurring mark. Martin Luther appeared with similar regularity, either named directly or invoked through the surrounding content and symbolism, and the word leitmotif, the German term for recurring theme, surfaced repeatedly throughout the pages, which was either a coincidence or a precise, self-aware description of the project's structural logic. The schizophrenia theory has circulated online for years as a way of dismissing the archive, attributing it to a single disturbed individual without the coherence or intentionality to be taken seriously as a puzzle. The counter-argument to that reading sits in 2 distinct places. First, the internal consistency of the material. These advertisements pull together mathematics, history, religion, science, multilingual fragments, maps, and recurring symbolic elements in ways that hold up across more than 4 decades of publication. That level of sustained, structured complexity resists easy reconciliation with disorganized thinking. Second, the financial dimension. A full-page advertisement in the Wildcast cost hundreds of dollars per placement. By 1997, dozens had already appeared, and they had been arriving since the early 1980s, with new editions continuing to emerge at regular intervals alongside smaller updates placed in between. That represents a long-term and substantial financial investment in a project maintained across decades, a commitment that implies both available resources and deliberate sustained intent. The first real lead on who was actually placing the advertisements came through an unexpected channel. Brian received an email from a Tucson attorney named Robert Truman Hungerford. Robert confirmed in that message that he had been serving as legal representative for the people behind the ads. He was a lawyer who had been submitting the content to the newspaper across all those years. But despite being the confirmed intermediary between the mystery's authors and the publication, he would not identify his clients in any of their communications. After that initial contact, Brian's investigation developed a different character. Carefully scripted phone calls began coming in. Cryptic mail arrived at his address. Packages appeared postmarked from Las Vegas and routed through Pakistan, some containing foreign stamps and coins from the Middle East. When Brian became ill and let his website updates lapse, a get well card arrived. None of the correspondence was overtly threatening. What it communicated was something more precise, that whoever was running this project knew exactly who Brian was, understood that he was paying close attention to the mystery, and had been paying equal attention to him. Robert Truman Hungerford was not an ordinary attorney with no obvious connection to the material. His background read as directly relevant to the content of the advertisements. He had studied at the University of Arizona, completed a doctorate in theology, held Mensa membership, and reportedly spoke Dutch, German, Greek, Hebrew, Latin, Russian, and Spanish, the same linguistic range that appeared in the advertisements themselves. Laid against the content of the ads, the theological references, the multilingual passages, the recurring historical figures, his background fitted in ways that extended well beyond coincidence. There was also a visual detail that investigators noted. Robert's old University of Arizona yearbook photograph showed close-cropped hair, eyebrows that ran nearly straight across his face, and a faint, controlled smile. The resemblance to the small, smirking figure that had appeared in the advertisements for years was immediately noted by people who saw both images. Robert denied being the sole author of the mystery. His stated position was that he represented an organization called the Orphanage. In interviews conducted over the years, he described the Mayday Project as a work of art, while also suggesting that a genuine society existed behind it, one that engaged in some fashion with future events. He stated that everything required to understand the mystery was already available on Brian's website, and he specifically directed attention toward the theological dimensions to the material as the most productive area of focus. No one has been able to confirm the existence of the orphanage or establish who its members are. The theories that have developed in the decades since Brian created his archive include a political activist group with roots in the Vietnam War era, an alternate reality game constructed at enormous financial and creative expense, and a large-scale conceptual art project engineered specifically to reward the kind of sustained, obsessive investigation that only a small number of people are willing to undertake. None of the available theories account for every element of the puzzle. puzzle that hasn't stopped people from attempting to solve it. A woman once drove from Phoenix specifically to meet Brian at a cafe in Tucson, carrying a substantial binder of research she had compiled over an extended period. Her theory was that the Mayday mystery had a direct connection to the Zodiac killer. She had been comparing symbols from the advertisements against ciphers and envelopes associated with that case and believed she had identified meaningful correspondences. Brian heard everything she had to say. He didn't find the theory persuasive. Before she left the cafe, she mentioned that she had already sent all of her research materials to the FBI. One of the most significant contributions toward understanding any portion of the puzzle came from an anonymous user on Brian's website operating under the name Near a Terminal. This person appeared to have genuine working knowledge of how at least one component of the system functioned. For an advertisement published in the early 1980s, Near a Terminal pointed out the following sequence. Counting the brush strokes in the Chinese characters on the page produced the number 24. Counting the letters in the English word appearing above them, Richmond produced the number 8. Combined, those two figures yielded 824, mapping directly to August 24th. The next advertisement in that series had been published on August 24th. That decode was verifiable against the archive and has been confirmed. It remains the only instance in which anyone has produced a clean, testable solution to any specific portion of the mystery. Brian became convinced that Near a Terminal had some form of connection to the orphanage, that the contribution came from someone operating inside the project rather than from an outside investigator working independently. Robert, in conversations conducted over the years, made one additional claim that extended the timeline of the mystery significantly beyond what the newspaper archive could document. He stated that the Mayday project predated the Wildcat advertisements entirely, that an initial message had existed before 1981, placed in a different medium that he declined to identify. He explained only that the material had been constructed in a way that would allow recognition only by someone who was already inside the group, meaning a person encountering it from outside would have no way of understanding what they were looking at, or even that they were looking at anything significant. The implication is direct. Brian's website, built across nearly 3 decades of careful archiving, may contain only a portion of what the Mayday project actually encompasses. Brian preserved the advertisements, the letters, the packages, and every associated piece of material across the entire span. After everything, the full archive, the phone calls, the routed packages, the verified date decode, the meetings with investigators, the extended engagement with Robert, he never arrived at a working understanding of what the messages were communicating or what purpose the overall project served. After more than 4 decades of appearances in the Wildcat, maintained through sustained financial investment across an unknown number of contributors, and scrutinized by a large number of investigators who have brought different frameworks and different areas of expertise to the material, the Mayday mystery has produced one verifiable decode, one confirmed legal intermediary who consistently declined to identify its clients, and no resolved account of what the project is, who the orphanage actually consists of, or what the accumulated pages have been attempting to communicate since the early 1980s. On July 7, 2006, a user operating under the name Box added a new location to Urban Exploration Resource, an online forum built around photographing and documenting abandoned buildings, forgotten structures, and urban spaces that most people pass without noticing. The listing appeared standard: an abandoned hotel somewhere in Atlanta, Georgia that Box and a small group had entered to photograph whatever remained before the building was cleared out. What they found in one of the rooms turned a routine exploration post into one of the more genuinely unsettling unresolved cases in internet history. The hotel had 4 floors, standard room layouts along wide interior walkways that overlooked a pool at the center of the building. Personal belongings were still visible throughout many of the rooms, an indication the space hadn't been vacant for long before the group arrived. Box included a description of the hotel's history directly in the post. This hotel was built in 1972, renovated in 1993. It spent most of its life as a major chain hotel. In 2004, the hotel became independent of the major chain. The main business model after that was a long-term stay hotel. This attracted many drug dealers and other illegal businesses to the hotel, and it was raided by the DEA and local authorities at least once. After many years of trouble, it closed in February 2006. Attached to the location listing was a photo album carrying the label, "Crime Scenes Not for the Faint of Heart, Fair Warning." Inside were 6 images, photographs of a stack of printed photographs found somewhere inside the building. The prints showed a middle-aged man who appeared to have been killed. Some captured him lying on the floor with blood pooled across wooden boards beneath him. Others show the room where the killing had taken place, blood marking the bed, blood on the walls. Other users on the forum immediately wanted to know whether Box had removed the prints from the building. If they were still there, someone could retrieve them and hand them over to law enforcement. Box stated in his post that he had left them exactly where he found them, attributed to his account. His explanation covered 2 points. There were people already inside the building with authorization to clear it out, and he hadn't wanted to be seen taking anything. He also wrote that the images were too disturbing and that finding them had left him in shock. Rather than taking the prints himself, he posted a map linked to the location so that anyone in Atlanta who read the thread could go and get them. The next day, another forum member went to the building and searched through it. The photographs were already gone. One immediate question is whether the whole thing was fabricated, whether Box sourced the images from somewhere else and attached them to his post for the reaction. Reverse image searches of the photographs produced no results anywhere online. If the prints had been taken from a film, a publicly documented criminal case, or any kind of archive with a web presence, some trace would be expected to turn up in a search. The absence of any match is consistent with the possibility that these images had never circulated before, that they were documentation of something real rather than recycled material. The only surviving record is Box's forum post from July 7th, 2006. The theory that draws most directly on the hotel's documented history proposes that the crime itself occurred somewhere in the building. Given the criminal activity that took place there during its final years of operation, drug trade, a DEA raid, the kind of extended stay clientele that brought ongoing enforcement attention, a scenario where a violent crime occurred in one of the rooms and was photographed by the person who committed it isn't implausible on its face. The prints under this reading were trophies or records that the killer left behind when they fled during a law enforcement operation. The physical evidence in Box's own photographs disrupts that reading. The hotel rooms he documented have carpeting throughout. The crime scene captured in the prints shows wooden floorboards. The floor surfaces don't match, and if a killing had happened somewhere inside that building, an explorer moving through the rooms would be expected to eventually find the location, marked walls, stained bedding. No such room was ever reported by anyone who visited the site. There's also a specific visual detail in some of the black and white prints. The body appears to be positioned on a flat white surface that looks more consistent with an autopsy table than with any surface inside an abandoned hotel room. If that reading is accurate, it means the victim was found and processed by authorities at some point after the crime occurred. That detail points toward a different theory, that the prints originated from an investigative process. Someone with access to case photographs, evidence files, coroner documentation, materials from an official investigation may have carried those prints into the hotel and left them there. This reading fits the autopsy table detail in a way the crime at the hotel theory doesn't. The problem is that no identified case has been connected to the photographs. Missing person reports from Atlanta around the period the hotel closed don't appear to include anyone whose visible characteristics match the man in the prints. That gap might indicate the crime took place years earlier, or in a different location entirely, with the photographs traveling some distance before ending up in that building. The most basic question the case raises has no available answer. Why would anyone carry evidence of a killing into a building scheduled for demolition and leave it in a pile of discarded clothing? A killer disposing of incriminating material would be expected to destroy it, not leave it where an explorer could photograph it. An investigator losing track of case documents in an abandoned hotel doesn't fit any recognizable process. None of the explanations that have been put forward over the years resolve why the prints were there in the first place. The photographs are gone, removed from the building sometime between the day Box posted the map link and the day a second user arrived to retrieve them. What remains is a single forum post from 2006, 6 images of physical prints that have never been traced to a source, and no confirmed connection to any identified victim or case. The trail closes at the building's entrance. Verrückt was built to be a record, a Schlitterbahn in Kansas City. It was marketed as the tallest water slide on the planet, standing at roughly 168 feet. The name itself was part of the pitch. Verrückt means insane in German, and the designers leaned into that entirely. The concept was a near vertical first drop into a raft that would then climb a massive secondary hill before coming down into the splash pool at the bottom. 3 riders per raft. strapped in, sent over a drop that looked less like a water slide and more like something that shouldn't exist. From the outside, it read as extreme but engineered. What was happening behind that image was something different. Before the public ever got near it, the ride had already flagged problems. The opening was pushed back multiple times while testing continued. During those early runs, rafts reportedly lifted off the surface of the slide and became airborne. That reporting is attributed and not confirmed beyond those accounts. Changes were made, more runs were completed, and eventually the ride was cleared for guests. The fact that those testing failures happened at all makes what followed harder to reconcile. On August 7, 2016, Caleb Schwab, 10 years old and the son of Kansas State Representative Scott Schwab, boarded Verrückt alongside 2 adult women. All 3 were strapped into the raft. The ride launched and proceeded through its opening section as designed. Then, the raft lifted off the slide surface. Caleb was ejected from his seat. He struck part of the metal support structure attached to the ride's netting system and suffered fatal injuries. The 2 women in the raft behind him survived, though both were hurt. Schlitterbahn closed the park almost immediately after the incident. The investigation that followed pulled back the curtain on how many warning signs had already accumulated around Verrückt. Caleb had weighed approximately 74 pounds and had been placed in the front seat of the raft with 2 significantly heavier riders positioned behind him. That weight imbalance is believed to have contributed to the raft lifting during the descent, but the weight distribution was only one part of the problem. The metal hoops and netting designed to keep the raft on course also created a hazardous contact point at the speeds the slide generated. By the time of Caleb's death, at least 13 prior injuries had already been reported on Verrückt. Riders who had made contact with the netting or the structural elements of the slide. In the aftermath, Kansas overhauled its amusement ride oversight legislation, ending a regulatory framework that had allowed parks to lean heavily on internal inspections. In 2018, criminal charges were filed against co-owner Jeff Henry, operations director Tyler Austin Miles, and co-owner John Shuley. Those charges were dropped in 2019. Verrückt was taken apart and removed in late 2018. Schlitterbahn, Kansas City, never returned to normal operation after the accident. The park eventually shut down entirely and the site was subsequently demolished. What makes this case so disturbing is the gap between the ride's public identity and what was actually known about it. Verrückt wasn't a temporary attraction at a small fairground. It was a promoted world record that drew attention specifically because of its scale and intensity, the height, the speed, the drop. All of it was the marketing. And all of it was also what made the consequences of its failures so severe. When someone gets on a ride like that, they're trusting that everything behind the spectacle has been properly engineered and tested. For Caleb Schwab, that trust was misplaced from the beginning. On September 12, 2008, Charles Speck, 49 years old and a Delta Airlines employee, was aboard a Metrolink commuter train on his way to Los Angeles. The destination was a job interview at Van Nuys Airport, a position that carried significance beyond the employment itself. If he got the job, he could move to California permanently and finally marry his fiancée, Andrea Katz, who had been living in Westlake Village waiting for the move to become possible. He never reached the interview. At approximately 4:22 p.m., the Metrolink train collided head-on with a Union Pacific freight train near Chatsworth, California. Investigation findings later determined that the Metrolink engineer had passed through a red signal in the moments before impact. He had been texting on his phone and was directed when the trains met. 25 people were killed in the collision. Charles was among them. What distinguishes this case from the broader scope of the disaster is what happened on his family's phones in the hours that followed. Andrea had already been driving to meet him at Moore Park Station when she heard the first crash reports on the radio. She drove to the site of the collision instead. His family arrived separately, all of them holding on to the possibility that he might be alive somewhere inside the wreckage. Hours after the collision, Charles' son received a call from his father's phone number. According to reported accounts from his family, over the course of that night, calls came through from Charles' number to his son, his brother, his sister, his stepmother, and Andrea. Approximately 35 calls in total. Every time one of them answered, the line produced either silence or static and went dead within seconds. The calls kept arriving while rescue operations were still active, and the family held on to the belief that he was somewhere inside the train, alive, trapped, and trying to reach them without being able to speak. Approximately 1 hour after the final call was received, rescuers located Charles' body deep inside the first train car. They found him by tracing the signal from his phone. According to reports passed to his family, the medical determination was that he had most likely died on impact, meaning before any of the calls had been placed. His phone was never found anywhere near his body. 4 theories have been put forward in the years since, and each one encounters a problem it cannot fully resolve. The first is mechanical failure. Phones in 2008 were built with physical push buttons, a device caught inside the compression debris of a head-on train collision, subjected to weight, moisture, or circuit damage, could plausibly begin cycling through stored contacts and recent call history without any intentional input. That would explain why calls originated from Charles's number despite him having died before they were made, and why every call produced static rather than a voice. The battery running out would account for why the calls eventually stopped. The issue with this explanation is that a randomly misfiring phone isn't selective. It would have dialed voicemail boxes, coworkers stored in his contacts, numbers that hadn't been called in months. Across approximately 35 calls, every single one reached a close family member. No call went anywhere else. The second theory is that another person used the phone. Someone trapped in the same section of the wreckage, too badly injured to speak, may have found Charles's phone and worked through his contact list, hoping the signal would bring rescuers to their location. That explains why nobody spoke on the line. It doesn't explain why a conscious person trying to summon help would dial the same 5 family members 35 times without ever placing a call to emergency services. It also doesn't explain the phone's location. Rescuers traced the signal to Charles's body, and no phone was found near him. If someone else had possession of the device and was somewhere else in the wreckage, the signal should have led to a different location entirely. The third theory is deliberate contact. Someone in the vicinity of the wreckage found the phone and called the family on purpose. Of the theories available, this is the only one that accounts for the missing phone. If someone walked away from the scene with it, that explains why it was never recovered. The conflict is with the tracking. Rescuers followed the signal to Charles's body inside the first car. A phone that had been carried away from that location would have drawn rescuers somewhere else. It didn't. The fourth possibility is the most structurally challenging, that Charles didn't die immediately on impact, and that the coroner's official time of death determination was wrong. For this to hold, a finding produced during a mass casualty event would have to contain a significant inaccuracy. It's worth noting that the official account of this case did contain at least one confirmed documented error. The initial victim list published by officials recorded Charles's age as 58. He was 49, nearly a decade younger. The correction came later. That error doesn't say anything directly about when he died. What it does confirm is that at least one verifiable mistake made it into the record assembled during a response where personnel were simultaneously managing extraction operations, victim identification, and communication with families under extreme pressure. Not one of the 4 explanations closes the case cleanly. The mechanical failure theory can account for why every call reached a family member rather than a random contact. The survivor theory leaves the phone's location in the absence of a 911 call without explanation. The deliberate contact theory conflicts with where the signal pointed. The time of death theory depends on a coroner's inaccuracy that has not been established. The single detail underneath all of them remains unchanged. Charles's phone was never recovered. Without it, no theory can be tested against the device itself. No call record can be technically reconstructed, and the question of what placed those 35 calls has no confirmed answer. I would love to hear your thoughts in this case, along with this next case that will make you lose sleep tonight. On August 28, 2017, people walked into the Clovis Carver Public Library in New Mexico expecting an unremarkable afternoon. Some came to read, others to use the computer, some to bring their children somewhere quiet and cool for a few hours. A public library occupies a particular kind of place in a community. It's an open-door, low-stakes environment where people arrive without much forethought and settle into whatever brought them there. The building was functioning exactly as it was intended to that day. That afternoon, a 16-year-old named Nathaniel Jett arrived at the library carrying 2 handguns he had removed from his father's gun safe. Before arriving, he had recorded videos of himself. In those recordings, his manner of speaking indicated that he had already mentally detached from what he was about to do.
I'm Nathaniel Ray Jute, and I was making this because it's about to be 0 hour. My thing was when I lost hope or when I just couldn't take it anymore is when I was going to do it. It's that time. By the time you're watching this, the deed would have already been done. And by the deed, I'm not sure what it is yet. I'm just going to go trolley along, find something to do. First off, I'm going to say I'm sorry to anyone that's going to be affected by this. This is a tough subject. I want to say I'm sorry to my family. I know, just remember, happier times. Oh, I love you, Dad. I love you, Mom. I acted alone. This was no one's fault. It's kind of my own. I'm angry at the world, and I have so much anger, and I can't time at you right. I have so much anger. frustration and just hopelessness. This needed to happen. It's probably gonna shock a lot of people. No one's ready for this. I'm really mad. I'm in a really mad mood, and this is kind of for people getting bullied, because I'm blaming, that's one of the big reasons, and just because I'm sick. Thanks to everyone that was nice to me, and yeah, all right, I just gotta...
At approximately 4:15 p.m., Nathaniel walked through the entrance of the Clovis Carver Public Library. Nothing about how he looked or how he moved through the space would have communicated anything unusual to the people around him. He appeared to enter the way anyone entering a public building would. He then went into the restroom, where he completed his preparation. A short time after that, he walked back out into the main area of the library. The quiet of that afternoon was broken immediately and without warning. People who had been reading, working at computers, or sitting alongside family members were thrown into panic within seconds of the first shot. Some ran toward exits, others dropped and concealed themselves wherever the building's layout made it possible. Parents grabbed their children and moved them or pulled them down. People pressed behind shelving, furniture, and walls. Nathaniel opened fire. Within the first seconds, multiple people had already been hit.
That door, Rick? Come on. Come on, go on. What are you doing? Run! You idiot!
Papa, please save me.
I'm at the library, somebody's required for shooting. There's 2 people laying dead up.
Okay. Whatever you do, don't die.
2 library employees were killed, Wanda Walters and Chrissy Carter. 4 other people were wounded, among them a 10-year-old named Noah Molina and his older sister, Alexis Molina, who was reportedly shot while placing herself between Nathaniel and her younger brother. Somewhere in the chaos unfolding inside the building, Noah, hiding and frightened, cried out for his father.
Papa, please save me.
The library in those moments held families, children, employees in the middle of their workday, and ordinary people who had arrived with no expectation of anything out of the ordinary. Emergency calls began flooding in simultaneously from multiple sources. Officers moved toward the building as quickly as they could get there. What they were heading into remained unclear in those early moments. How many people had been hit, where inside the building the shooter was, how many people were still trapped and unable to get out safely. What was confirmed was that shots had been fired in a public library, that people had been struck, and that children were still somewhere inside the building.
Put your hands up where I can see them. Step away from the door. Step away from the door. Do it now. Do it. Go. Come out. Step away. Step away. Step out. Come out. Step out. Step out. Step out. Let him get out. You know who's shooting?
No, we don't.
Okay.
He
was in there the whole while. Get back in there. Get back in there and stay. Close the door and block it. Don't let anybody else in. We're going in. Go. Police! Show me your hands. It's police. Police! Come here. Come here. Show me your hands. Show me your hands. Come on. Come on. Let's go. Come on. Let's go. Out. Come on. Yeah. Get in. Right over there.
Inside in the bathroom. I know that's
Clear.
When officers arrived, the scene was still unfolding and difficult to read. People were actively trying to flee. Others were concealed behind shelves, behind closed doors, behind furniture, remaining still because moving felt like a risk. Officers had to move through the building quickly while making continuous judgments about who was a victim and who might be a threat, under conditions where both speed and accuracy were required simultaneously. The people still inside were receiving instructions from officers while still processing what they had just experienced. Officers located Nathaniel and placed him under arrest. No additional gunfire occurred during that process.
Go. Subject right there. Put your hand there. Keep your hand. Anybody else? I'm Stay right there, okay? Stay right there. You're all right.
2 women went to work at the library that day and didn't come home. 4 other people were injured. A brother and sister were both shot inside a public building on an ordinary afternoon. Investigators established that Nathaniel was 16 and had brought weapons into the library that he had taken from his father's gun safe. According to police, he did not appear to have had any personal connection to the people he shot, attributed to their assessment. The victims were not chosen based on who they were. They were present in the same building at the same time he was. Nathaniel was charged as an adult and ultimately pleaded guilty to multiple felony charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder. In 2019, he was sentenced to 2 concurrent life sentences, plus an additional 40 years in prison for the people who survived the attack. It didn't conclude when he was taken into custody. It continued through hospital stays, courtroom appearances, ongoing trauma, and the lasting change to how familiar public places felt afterward. For the families of Wanda Walters and Chrissy Carter, the facts are both simple and permanent. 2 women left for work at a public library, and the building became the place where they died. The Clovis Carver Public Library was not a location anyone associated with danger. It was a room stocked with books and computers, staffed by employees, used by parents and children and community members on a weekday afternoon. In the span of a few minutes on August 28, 2017, it became the site of one of the most documented and devastating attacks in New Mexico's recorded history, and a permanent marker in the memory of every person who was inside it that day. While that was terrifying, this next case shows one of the most disturbing and darkest mysteries ever. In December 2014, a Japanese website launched with a slogan on its homepage that made its purpose unambiguous from the first line: "I wish my husband would die right now. I think about it every day." The site was called DannySheen.com. Translated into English, that's diehusband.com. It functioned as an anonymous forum where married women could write about their husbands without any identifying information attached to their posts. Reading through the early pages, the dominant impression was of a platform created for frustration that had nowhere else to go. Women writing about marriages that had stopped working a long time before they found the site. "Nothing good has happened in the 10 years I've been with this guy. He thinks it's okay when I'm not good and complains if he doesn't like something. Does the world revolve around him? I'm just annoyed by being with this rude jerk. He's been lying to me for 20 years and I, being foolish, have been deceived all this time. But I've reached my limit. When I talk to him, he just lies. And when he's at a loss for words, he stays silent." Hundreds of pages of posts in that register fill the forum. Anonymous wives writing about husbands who cheated, spent household money on gambling, came home drunk regularly, and treated a family as something that existed to serve their needs. That content alone makes the platform heavy to read through. What the site was structured around gives it an additional dimension. The entire framework of DannySheen.com was drawn from Death Note, a manga series in which writing a person's name in a supernatural notebook causes their death. The women on the forum treated it as exactly that, a notebook addressed to the Grim Reaper, filled with requests for him to come and collect their husbands. The posts followed a recognizable format. "How long is this scumbag husband gonna live? Grim Reaper, please, please come and take this scumbag husband away quickly. As soon as possible, please. Good morning, Grim Reaper. I wish my husband would die right now. I think about it every day. He is a truly awful husband. My heart is always in prayer. Please, please, please die soon." The administrator maintained a running counter on the site's homepage displaying how many husbands had supposedly died since the forum launched, presented as though writing in the notebook had worked. When a husband actually did die, women returned to the site to post. One described the morning she found her husband had died in the night, the ambulance she called. The moment responders confirmed what had happened. "Honestly, I'm so happy. So happy. Thank you, Grim Reaper." Other users responded with congratulatory posts. The tone across those comment threads was collective relief, something close to celebration. Understanding how this site developed its user base requires some context about divorce in Japan. The most direct legal route out of a marriage requires the consent of both parties. If the husband won't agree to sign, the wife has to go through mediation and can end up in court proceedings that take significant time to resolve. Even after a formal separation is complete, social consequences follow. Divorce in many parts of Japanese society carries real stigma, and the judgment comes from family members as readily as from anywhere else. For women with children who have no financial independence outside of the marriage, those social pressures sit on top of already significant practical barriers. Many users on DannySheen.com wrote directly about being economically trapped, about not having the resources to build a separate life for themselves and their children, about the impossibility of leaving without losing everything they depended on. For those women, the death of a husband represented something specific, the one scenario in which a different life became accessible without the cost or the shame of a divorce. A forum structured around that logic and that need draws a particular kind of participant and draws them in numbers. Some posts went well past prayer and venting. I want to somehow find a way to kill my husband without getting caught. I'll pretend to be sad when he dies. Others described deliberately contaminating food and giving it to their husbands to cause illness. Some went further still, posting step-by-step instructions for poisoning someone using substances that produce organ failure gradually without drawing immediate medical suspicion. Everything posted anonymously, with no way to distinguish from outside whether a given entry was a dark thought being processed in a space that felt removed from real life, or an account of something the writer had already carried out. That distinction is what makes the administrator's death counter impossible to interpret at face value. There is no way to determine which entries in that tally represents husbands who died from natural causes and which represent deaths that were planned in the forum's posts before they occurred. Some of the hardest posts on the site weren't directed outward at all. Some were written by women who had turned their distress inward, expressing their wishes for their own end rather than their husbands'. Those posts shifted the character of the forum in a meaningful way. Reading through them, many of the women on DannySheen.com weren't writing from cruelty or cold calculation. They were writing from fear and exhaustion that had built across years, from situations that had narrowed until the darkest thoughts were the most honest ones they had. My heart is dead. It's being killed by the verbal abuse of my husband, who denies my very existence. When he's in a bad mood, he takes it out on me. He says it's all my fault that this happened because my character is rotten, connecting even the most unrelated things and denying everything about me. I've tried to forget, to ignore it, and endured it until now, but I can't take it anymore. Others described physical violence that had continued through pregnancy. When I was 3 months pregnant with my first child, he pushed me down the stairs during an argument, fracturing a bone that took 6 months to heal. When I was in my 9th month of pregnancy with my first child, he drove me to a remote mountain area, threw me out of the car, and dragged me around. DannySheen.com held all of this in the same space, women writing from genuine fear and years of mistreatment who had no other place to put what they were carrying, alongside users posting instructions for ending someone's life without detection. Posts that function as venting and posts that read as confessions, separated by nothing but the content of the text itself, with no mechanism available for telling them apart. The site's Death Note framework, the administrators countered ticking upward, the forum treating itself as a notebook that worked, sat directly alongside accounts of abuse that were as real as anything documented anywhere. What the counter was actually counting is a question the platform's anonymity was designed to make permanently unanswerable. In 2012, a missing person case out of Maryland began with a Ghanaian man named Kujo Bunafo Agai Cody, 37, who had been staying with the Kanua family in Jabatown for several weeks. When he disappeared without taking any of his personal belongings, the circumstances felt immediately suspicious to those around him. Police opened a missing person inquiry and began looking for a man who had simply walked out of a family home and hadn't been seen since. Days into the investigation, a member of the Kanua family went down to the basement and discovered human remains concealed inside containers. Police returned to the residence. The investigation shifted immediately. This was no longer a search for a missing person.
Last night, right before I took a shower, so I went down to the basement and I opened the laundry door and I saw my blanket on top of a box. And as I was lifting the blanket up, I saw two pans. So I lifted up the pans and in it I saw 3 different objects and they were kind of black, and it looked like hands and a head. I stopped what I was doing. I went upstairs and I asked Alex, come down here. And I asked him, what is it? And he said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's none of your business and all that stuff. And he started avoiding my question.
The focus of the investigation moved to Alex Kanua, the eldest son in the household and a former Morgan State University student. What made the case more unsettling from the outset was the context that surrounded Alex before Cujo even disappeared. Just days earlier, he had been released on bail following a separate attack involving another student, meaning he was already known to police for recent violent behavior when this investigation began. When officers searched the home, what they found pointed directly at him: human remains, bloodstains, weapons, and video recordings. In one of those recordings, Alex spoke calmly about skulls, bodies, and violence, attributed to what those recordings showed, in a register that gave the footage a quality that was difficult to rationalize.
Yeah. I beat open your bed and I jerked off and I sparked on. You got something to say, man? You can look at it on your bed. Hope you have a good night's sleep. DP on them freaks. Super freak, huh? You like them super freaks? Well, I got you one. It's all over your bed. Playing games with out here. Who's playing with you? Nobody's playing with you. Matter of fact, I don't even have the respect to be called no more. So this will fucking happen, so that you keep doing that shit again, that shit gonna keep happening. Listen, next time shit will be that. Here's what's gonna happen. See your fucking clothes? Go look in your bed. Fuck, I left your fucking surprises. That's just me. All the names are put on the board. Now, there's a tell, it's a story. And then our phones as a scapegoat has returned. And another boy that was picked up as released the scapegoat. Just get it close. You must each measure your face. Deal with clothes.
Skulls are getting cracked. No. Skulls are getting extracted. Their brains are getting extracted. You know what happens when skulls get extracted? Their brains get sucked out, their noses. When I'm gone, please believe. The whole.
The recordings didn't show someone reacting to something that had recently gone wrong. They showed a mind already circling around something severe before investigators had any understanding of what had taken place inside that house. After his arrest, detectives brought Alex in for questioning about the evidence found during the search of the residence.
Do you believe that deoxyribonucleic acid is an indicator to identify who an individual is? So you can tell the difference between the blood of a fox and the blood of a human being?
Yes.
Where do you think the blood under your mattress showed?
That's the blood from period.
From period?
Yeah, a woman's period.
And what woman would that be?
Oh, she doesn't see.
What about the blood that was in the
box?
The
box. That's a fox blood there.
What if I told you that it wasn't? What if I told you that that was human blood?
Then I have to show you exactly what's it dried up with, especially.
His first response was to attempt to explain the evidence away and offer alternative accounts for what had been found. As questioning continued, those accounts broke down. He eventually admitted that Cujo was dead. He directed investigators to where more remains could be found and provided a confession that experienced detectives found deeply unsettling to sit through and document.
Where did Cujo want to go? You're not going to find this. Can you tell me? I can direct you to one. Okay, where is it? It's right under your nose. Not at the police station, I hope. No. Okay, where? Well, one is in my stomach, but... Is in your what? In your stomach? What part was that? What part was hot? When did that happen? Yesterday. The other body parts, are they... Can you give me an idea where they are? You might be able to know. You might find them. Did you put them in the rest of the body? What? Is it the rest of the body itself? Or did you just cut out certain parts? Or? That's okay. You looking for his head? Yes. And his head is taken care of. Is it in the, how it taken care of? Can you tell me any more than that?
His head is. You have anybody at the house right now?
Mm-hmm.
Can you get him on the phone? Okay, go to the dining room. Okay, there's a big cabinet, a white cabinet that has like glass shelves on it. Do you see a bag of charcoal? Go ahead and open it.
What is it, Alex?
Do you see it? Okay.
What is this inside the bag? What exactly?
Is that what we're looking for?
That's what he.
What made the confession most disturbing wasn't purely the content of what he disclosed. It was the manner in which he delivered it. No visible panic came through, no emotional breakdown, no apparent awareness of the severity of what he was describing as he described it. He spoke in a flat, detached register, as though recounting events that had occurred at some remove from himself, or that involved someone other than the person sitting in the interrogation room.
Took the axe. Just went to work on his head. And then hit him about twice. And after that, I let him bleed out. And I took his heart out. After I took his heart out, got my knife, cut him off.
I guess his head disgusted you, and you wanted to deform the head, trip away the hands, eat some of them, and you ate his heart.
That's the only part I did eat. I didn't eat his head. I tasted some of it. It's tasted whatever, put some barbecue sauce.
Did you use some barbecue sauce?
It's spice, small baked spice, whole baked, some sea salt.
How do you feel now?
Justice is there. That's how
The missing person inquiry was now formally confirmed as a murder investigation. Alex Kinua was charged with first-degree murder in the death of Cujo Bonafo Agai Cody. He entered a guilty but not criminally responsible plea. Psychiatric evaluations supported the finding that he could not be held criminally responsible for the crime under applicable legal standards. He was subsequently committed to a psychiatric facility on an indefinite basis. The legal proceedings closed the case on a formal level. What they didn't account for was the broader picture of what had preceded everything. Warning signs had been present before the truth came to light. The recordings made before anyone knew what had happened, the earlier violent offense that had already brought him into contact with law enforcement, the behavior observed in the home, and the manner in which he described the crime during questioning. A man had come to stay in a residence expecting to be safe, and it was the family living under that same roof who found what remained of him. The recordings, which might have seemed like incoherent material on a first pass, read differently with the full context in place, less like random footage and more like evidence that something had already moved past the threshold inside that house before anyone on the outside was aware of it. If you thought that was disturbing, you aren't ready for this next one. Fasten your seatbelts. On the evening of February 22, 2023, Vincent Labonte, 26, a Microsoft software engineer, was walking home from the company's One Estero building when a man approached him on the sidewalk at approximately 5:45 p.m., shouting as he closed the distance. Before Vincent could react or move, he was knocked to the ground and stabbed 13 times in rapid sequence. The attack lasted for approximately 10 seconds from first contact to when it ended. The injuries it produced were significant: a skull fracture, a brain bleed, and nerve damage distributed across both hands. Multiple surgical procedures would be required for him to survive. When the attack was over, the attacker did not run. He walked away from the scene, made his way through roughly 4 blocks of City Street, and let himself into his own apartment. Between the attack location and his front door, he left a continuous trail of blood on the pavement. A SWAT team traced it to the address and forced entry. The person they arrested was identified as Joseph Richard Cantrell, 27, a software engineer also employed at Microsoft. That shared employer drew investigators immediately toward theories about professional conflict or workplace-based targeting. Vincent's own statement to police resolved that line of inquiry. He told them he had never seen Joseph before, that they worked in completely separate buildings with no professional overlap, and that he had no knowledge of the man who had attacked him. As investigators built a fuller picture of the event, it looked less like a targeted attack on a specific person and more like violence that could have reached anyone who happened to be in the space Joseph moved through that evening. The only document that offered any context for why it happened was found in Joseph's personal computer during the post-arrest search, a hidden link to a text file that investigators located on the device. The file was a 234,000-word journal written across multiple years. Joseph had uploaded it to the internet in the hours before the attack and tagged it as fiction. His own introduction contradicted that classification. He described the journal as beginning as a drug usage log before expanding into what he called an overall life journal and literary practice. Understanding the journal in any depth requires first establishing the foundational belief that organized nearly everything within it, what Joseph believed about himself and about his own cognition. The clearest statement appeared on his personal website in an About section where he wrote about experiencing what he called neural disturbances and described having danced and conversed with processions of rainbow ghost women who kept him company through the night, attributed to his website. He had given this condition a name of his own devising, neural deceleration disorder. His framework held that his neurons fired at a reduced rate compared to other people, leaving his cognitive capacity suppressed unless he took corrective action. The correction he had settled on was drug use, documented exhaustively. A 20-page section in the journal cataloged every substance he had consumed across the years in the course of managing the condition he had named. Amphetamines held a central position. He described them in the journal as his ticket to life, the only substance that actually produced the correction he needed, and stated that he had made a committed decision to remain dependent on them for the rest of his life, attributed to journal entries. At sufficiently high doses, he wrote, they produce rainbow women and even a white light. The journal traced his life chronologically, beginning before his own birth. His mother consumed alcohol and smoked during the pregnancy. His father was absent from before Joseph arrived and remained estranged. Early childhood entries recorded an ADHD diagnosis and Adderall prescription starting in kindergarten. At 7 years old, he abandoned his faith. He grew up in poverty and eventually enrolled at Georgia Tech, where he completed a bachelor's degree in computer science. What the degree produced, in combination with skills he developed independently, was technical capability he applied in increasingly targeted ways. He taught himself game development and published his work publicly on his website. The most prominent project was Prophet Launcher, a 2D shooter in which the player fires at a procession of religious figures, including Jesus and Buddha. The tagline he attached read, "Aim to offend the pillars of humanity's most sacred." The game was removed from both Steam and the Google Play Store after being flagged on each platform. Taken as a body of work, his projects reflected the same pattern of directed hostility towards specific categories of people that appeared throughout his writing, consistent across different outputs and intensifying rather than diminishing over time. As the journal moved into his adult years, the character of the entries shifted substantially. The clinical register of the earlier drug tracking sections gave way to a framework operating on different terms. Joseph arrived at the conviction that films were embedding direct references to events in his personal life, a recognized marker in clinical descriptions of psychotic thinking. A December 2021 entry cataloged dozens of specific films he believed were coordinated elements of a campaign against him, designed to eliminate records of his medical history, to produce illness in him, and to push him toward self-harm. By that point, he had developed specific fears directed toward Jewish, Black, Brown, and South Asian people, attributed to journal entries, and had concluded he was the subject of an organized, sustained surveillance operation. An October 2021 entry described his belief that Black and Latino gangs were running coordinated efforts to have him sued, imprisoned, or killed, carrying this out through hijacked vending machines and Microsoft ID personnel restricting his internet access. What makes the final stretch of entries particularly difficult to reconcile with the external record is that none of this was visible to anyone around him. Joseph continued working as a software engineer at Microsoft throughout the year before the attack, attending team meetings, completing assignments, and receiving a salary without any documented incident surfacing professionally. He came home from those meetings and wrote about them in entries carrying racial contempt directed specifically at Indian colleagues. By summer 2022, remaining in one place had become impossible. The experience of being surveilled didn't lift regardless of what he did or where he stayed. He left his apartment and moved into a motel. When the feeling persisted, he moved to another one. A July 2022 entry described 2 full years of sensing an enemy positioned permanently outside his door, and that attempting something as ordinary as picking up a guitar would cause his mind to fill immediately with images of people surrounding his room, waiting to act against him, attributed to the journal. One entry near the end of the document briefly acknowledged that he thought he might be becoming paranoid. It appeared once and produced no change in the direction the writing had been taking. Approximately 2 hours after his final entry was completed, Joseph walked outside. The person he encountered was Vincent Labonte on his way home from work. Vincent survived after undergoing multiple surgical procedures. When police forced entry into Joseph's apartment, he was in the process of attempting to destroy evidence, a knife and gloves that still carried blood from the attack. He was charged with attempted second-degree murder and first-degree assault. No confirmed explanation exists for why Joseph Cantrell attacked Vincent Labonte rather than someone else. No prior relationship between them has been established. No contact, no documented interaction, no identified grievance specific to Vincent. The journal, now accessible only through Internet Archive services, is the only document providing any context for the events of February 22, 2023. What it contains across 234,000 words produced over multiple years is a record of a framework in which the perceived category of enemy had expanded progressively through specific fears and beliefs directed at specific groups, until by the evening of the attack, it extended into the space occupied by strangers on the street.
They were doing videos of training dogs with firearms, and one of the rounds went into a kid's forehead and dropped him dead.
And then all of a sudden I hear, "Oh, did I get him?" And then I look at Curtis and I see blood pouring out of his nose and ears.
On June 3, 2025, employees at Kraftwerk Canine, a dog training business in Thurston County, Washington, gathered in the field to film a promotional video for the company. The concept involved a German Shepherd, a discharging firearm, and a staged bite work demonstration intended to be captured on camera and used in advertising material for the business. Curtis Gordon, 23 years old and an employee of the company, was wearing a protective bite sleeve and had been positioned near the zone where the dog was expected to react during the demonstration. Wayne Curry, the business owner, was holding the dog while simultaneously firing live rounds toward a paper target set up across the field. Cameras were running throughout. Other employees were present on the field and watching the shoot. The general understanding among those present was that this was a controlled, planned demonstration for content production purposes, but according to witnesses, Curtis had been standing dangerously close to the active target area while live ammunition was being discharged downrange. When the dog didn't react with the level of intensity the shoot required, Curtis was reportedly asked to move closer to the animal and agitated, placing the employee in the bite sleeve nearer to the direction of live gunfire than he already was. Then, in a single uncontrolled moment, the dog jerked suddenly and pulled Wayne's arm and the firearm off to the side. A round discharged. Curtis collapsed almost immediately. The field went quiet for a fraction of a second before the reality of what had just occurred hit everyone standing there. Filming stopped. Employees ran toward Curtis. Someone placed a call to 911.
911, what are you reporting?
Someone's been shot. My coworker's been shot.
Okay, what happened exactly?
He got accidentally shot.
Is he conscious?
No.
Is he breathing normally?
No.
If he's unconscious and not breathing normally, we need to start CPR. I can tell you how to do it. Get him on his back on the ground.
Okay. He opened his mouth and he breathed one breath. He's trying to breathe.
Okay. Is his chest rising and falling?
No.
Okay. So then we need to kneel by his side.
Okay.
Put your hand on the center.
He just tried to breathe one. I think his lungs are full of blood.
Okay. Put your hand on the center of his chest, right between the nipples, and put your other hand on top of that.
It's a, I don't,
Oh shit, he's in the top of the head.
Okay.
He's in the top of the head.
What are they putting on top of the head?
Help him breathe. I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah, my hands are between his chest. I'll move his head, I think.
Maybe you get the blood to come out.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
There it goes again. There's another breath. 1,
Yeah, that's just reactionary breathing, so just don't worry about that.
The call that connected to dispatch was desperate from the first words exchanged. The dispatcher worked to walk employees through CPR while they stood over a man whose visible injuries were already communicating what the situation likely was.
One, no! 1, 2, no! 1, 2, no! 1, 2, 1, 2, no way! 1, 2, no way! 1, 2, no way!
They kept working on him and trying to help him, but everyone on that field understood, beneath the noise and the panic, that something had already happened that no amount of effort could undo.
Where's he at? Where's he at? This building?
I think he's out that way.
To the right?
All the way to the back.
To the right?
Yes.
guys on the ground over there. That's the owner of the place right there. They were shooting a video of what he was saying about guns and dogs. Guns right there. Something happened. I didn't get the whole thing about, and there's the guys over there had, looks like he's got the leash in his hand. And somehow he got in the way, dog jerked him.
Why is he being held down?
He's not being held down.
Okay.
No. He is just distraught.
Okay.
And he was up when we got here, and then when we pronounced the guy, he just lost it. He's been that way. They're just trying to console him.
Deputies arrived at the scene to find Curtis on the ground and Wayne standing nearby, visibly overwhelmed. At 10:37 a.m., Curtis Gordon was pronounced dead at the location. As investigators began working through what had taken place, one question came to the surface almost immediately. What was the justification for discharging live ammunition during a staged promotional video shoot with an employee positioned downrange near the target?
There were 3 people, Connor, Craig, and Kaylin, doing videos and pictures. Wayne, the owner, was shooting, and he said that Wayne had the dog.
They were doing videos of training dogs with firearms, and rather than using blanks, one of the rounds went into a kid's forehead and dropped him dead.
But look at that, that's head height. So why would you be shooting at, according to them, he was shooting at the target.
Where are the rounds at?
I don't know.
Apparently the optics went forward.
Yeah, you've got,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Unless he just hung a new one.
When officers examined the field, they recovered dozens of spent shell casings from across the grass. What they did not find was a single bullet hole in the paper target positioned across the field. That absence raised immediate and serious questions about where the rounds had actually been going and how much control had genuinely existed over the demonstration at any point. Employees told investigators that this was one of the first times the business had produced content combining dogs with a firearm being actively discharged. In earlier demonstrations, they said, the weapons had either been unloaded or people had been moved well away from the shooting area before live rounds were introduced. On this day, that approach hadn't been taken.
The way it's supposed to happen is you're supposed to heel around with a dog between your legs with a gun in your hands and shoot a target, put your gun down, then you continue with bite work.
They wanted to do an advertisement on gunbroker.com, so he was trying to do a specific ad campaign. And so he started shooting at the target. And he stopped and said, "Oh, Curtis, maybe you can get a little bit closer in." So he wanted the dog looking forward, so he wanted the dog to pay attention to Curtis while he shot at the target. So he probably had Curtis move in like 30 feet to the left of where he was shooting.
30 feet from the target, or from
30 feet to the left from the target.
Left
but
of the
down
target,
range.
okay. Downrange, okay.
Yes.
So first the dog was just quiet and unbothered by it, so he kind of wanted more out of it, so he asked Curtis to agitate the dog. And as Curtis was agitating the dog, he was still shooting in the whole process. And he never stopped shooting until the dog jerked his leg, I'm guessing, and jerked him to the side, and his gun went towards Curtis.
And then all of a sudden I hear, "Oh, did I get him?" And then and I look at Curtis and I see blood pouring out of his nose and ears.
I remember I had the camera on the boss. I was watching the boss. I heard a shout and I look over and I see my brother on the ground. That's all I remember about that whole thing.
While one person on the field processed their grief in stunned silence, Curtis's older brother Kevin arrived at the location, and what he arrived with was something very different from quiet grief.
Who is that?
That's my brother.
No, please stop. No, stop.
We're happy to let you see him at some point, but we can't let you go there right this second, okay? So we just need you to wait back here.
That's what we're here. That's what we're figuring out, right?
Where is he?
It sounds like there was an accident, okay?
Where is he?
Doesn't seem like anything was intentional. He's back here, but we can't let you back there right now.
What happened?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out. Okay? This sounds like there was an accidental shooting. There was some training going on with live fire, and it sounds like there was a stray round that went off.
Is this a joke?
No.
I'm sorry.
Where was he shot?
Who's this?
I don't know anything.
Idiots. He's dead, huh?
Your brother is deceased.
Who shot my little brother? That's figuring that all out, right? Oh, I'm gonna kill that mother. You fucking. I'm gonna kill that mother.
I totally understand your frustration.
My little brother's dead right there.
He's back there, yeah. And your other brother is here also, so the best thing that you can do right now is comfort your other brother.
For a stupid video. For what? Mother, I'll kill you. What the happened? No, hey, bull. What the happened? I know, you gotta be. What stupid? What game is that? Playing around with guns. Whose idea?
Wayne.
No.
Yeah, I know. Be here for Connor.
Be here for Connor. He's dead.
In his rage and heartbreak, Kevin did not yet realize he had come to the wrong scene and was mourning the wrong brother.
It wasn't Connor. It was you or Curtis.
It's Curtis. Connor's right here.
Sorry, bro. I'm really sorry, man. I'm sorry, bro. Oh no. Oh no. We're really sorry for your loss, man. Dude. You. Wayne, dude, put a bullet in that motherfucker's head for me. Old fat piece of heartless.
To fully understand what had occurred in that field, investigators needed to sit down with Wayne directly and hear his account of events. That conversation would take a turn that investigators weren't prepared for.
I haven't used the rifle yet.
Is that a new rifle?
It's a rifle that I've had for years. I just can't shoot it.
Okay.
We were just doing the pistol, and this time it's the rifle.
The sight on the gun is an electronic sight, and he was talking about, oh, is this thing dead? The battery's dead, so he was just gonna have to kind of with no sight.
It's a ambidextrous one, so you can hold it in one hand or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
The problem I think happened is must have been like this. I mean, lightning fast.
Yeah.
I think the dog did this, and there might have been a reflex, but I saw him drop. I thought, did he do that to fake it? Because we're making a movie. And he didn't get up. And then it was like, they called 911, and the guy that works for me, and he looked like he was breathing. And there wasn't a lot of blood or nothing, so I'm holding his head, and
Wayne went silent during the interrogation. Nearly a full minute passed before the detective spoke again.
Breathe. Try to breathe.
Yeah.
Just breathe. Right? Just try to breathe. Can I get one of the medics over here?
are you still here?
Yep, we're
We're still here, Wayne.
They tried to get me to count to 10, and I couldn't make it to 7.
Let's try 5.
Okay. Ready?
Yep.
1.
Good.
Ow! Ow!
Hey Wayne, while this is going on, just take your time. But I'm gonna just so you're aware, if you've seen him, I'm gonna snap a couple pictures because you got some stuff on you.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I
I
just want to
know what I
document.
got on me, dude. It's real bad.
I know. I just want to document.
I know.
It, okay?
I know.
I know.
No, no.
The emotional breakdown Wayne displayed during the interview appeared to produce some sympathy from the detectives conducting it. Curtis's brother had none left to give.
You gotta put a bullet in Wayne's head for me. Please. Please.
That won't bring your.
No, it won't. It won't. It won't even make it feel better either, but he deserves it. My little brother, man. He's just an old senile who shouldn't even have his driver's license, let alone own 50 unregistered guns. Yeah.
Did you in any way mean to harm
Of
Curtis
course
today?
not. No, not in a million years. Of course not.
Okay.
We were all excited because we're doing this advertisement why people should get a dog instead of a gun.
Both investigators and the people who had worked alongside Curtis at Craftwork Canine wanted the same question answered. Why had a young employee been put in the path of live rounds to make a video look more compelling?
Hold it really
Really
to
hard.
the left.
It's a big pull.
Yeah. Why would you do this?
I don't know. I'm sure he's going to be asking that for the rest of his life.
Sitting in the back of a patrol car, Wayne struggled to absorb what that morning had produced, what had come out of that gun, where it had gone, and what it had taken.
No. No, 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 no.
Or why you would shoot with somebody downrange anyways.
Well, that's what he said. He goes, "Oh, it sounds really stupid now, doesn't it?" And I was like,
Yeah, it does.
"What a fiasco, huh?"
No! 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 Oh, no! No!
Were you yelling something? Hard time what? Just take some deep breaths. Take some deep breaths.
It's like the Baldwin movie scene.
Oh,
You know what I'm talking about?
100%.
Oh, Rust.
Huh?
Rust?
Yeah, with
Rust,
Rust, yeah.
yeah.
Even though I think this is more up than Rust. Because at least the actor could have said, like, I didn't expect it to be live rounds. Where it's like, oh yeah, I put live rounds in there. And I was like, go run.
Help me, Lord. I need you. I don't know what else to do. I can't believe this.
While Wayne's devastation appeared real to those observing him, the investigation continued moving forward, and what it uncovered began to change the shape of the case considerably.
The work environment was extremely chaotic. Some days were really great, some days were really bad. It would just really kind of depend on the mood of Wayne and what he wanted that day, the weather, those kind of things. When you actually got in there and saw what happened behind the scenes, it wasn't pretty.
Current and former employees described a workplace they had characterized as chaotic, erratic, and often frightening to be a part of. Attributed to their accounts, they alleged that Wayne could become emotionally volatile in ways that made people around him cautious and hesitant to push back, that employees were concerned about how he would react to being challenged, and that people working there didn't consistently feel they had freedom to refuse what he asked.
He said was in the name of training, and shared that there's a lot of training techniques and things that are done to get the dogs at the highest level that are a little bit less than socially acceptable. So I witnessed on multiple occasions he would kick dogs in the ribs. He would kick male dogs in the private parts from behind to catch them off guard if they were being ornery during protection. I watched him drag a dog across the field one time because it wasn't healing properly on his side. So he just kept yanking it by the neck until it, stayed with him. But it was obviously terrified and trying to get away from him.
No! 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 No!
Another instance I saw, he lifted a dog up by the leash and the collar, and it was choking. It peed all over itself, just terrified in a room. It was just me and him in a room. He didn't want anyone else to see that, but the dog wasn't sitting close enough to him.
Gosh, that sucks.
You get enough air back there a little bit? Okay.
He just gets to sit in the back of a cold cop car. Turn that off. No AC for that old man. Let him sit in there and die.
A lot of the times the dogs were just left in the kennels on end without getting exercise for days at a time. He would ask that we not feed them in the mornings so that they would be hungry for videos.
For one instance, he was working with a dog that was pregnant. She wasn't listening and being relatively, stubborn, didn't want to listen to him, and he did end up kicking her in the stomach.
Do you know what resulted of that dog's pregnancy?
I'm not sure because I actually ended up quitting that week because of that.
And the picture didn't stop there.
There was puppies that were not up to his standards. There was one dog that didn't have a fully developed ear. He had us put the live puppies in the freezer until they died.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many would you say were put in like that?
While I worked there, probably at least 10. Or at one time, I heard over the walkie-talkie that Wayne just he didn't want to waste the vaccination on a dog that probably wouldn't make it through the night.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty cheap. I mean, I grew up on a farm. It's not that much money for vaccination. So he'd rather just kill him.
Anytime he'd do that, I'd see him in the office in my files where I would keep puppy vaccines and all these medical records, and he would dig out the dog that he killed and get rid of the records.
The owner, Wayne, was very emotionally turbulent.
No.
He would get in employees' faces and scream and yell and just make them feel extremely scared and uncomfortable.
I have to care about the other people.
Yeah, we're with, I got another channel.
Yeah, he told me that.
He would snap. Like it was like almost, I don't want to call it bipolar because that's a medical thing, but he almost had like a bipolar or split personality disorder. He was like this really nice guy sometimes, and then he was this really awful guy other times.
He cornered me in my office, which I could not get out of, and he was shaking his fist in my face, cussing at me, and he was upset that I hadn't paid one of his personal bills. Mind you, I'm 5 feet tall, and a gun, a pistol, fell out of his jacket pocket and hit the floor.
They were great team. They're a team.
He would get in my face and scream at me. He would shake me. There was another time when I saw him physically attack the other manager on the property.
I saw him, and it was recorded. Of course, I don't think it's around any longer, but he beat one of the employees with a dog whip.
I'm sorry. What?
He was doing a video, and he was trying to get one of the employees to handle a dog. He wasn't doing it correctly or not the way that Wayne wanted it done. And he hit the man with a dog whip consecutive times. Of course, they were told to erase that video.
The same pattern emerged consistently across account after account, a workplace where Wayne's conduct was described as unpredictable, intimidating, and difficult to contest openly, attributed to employees. A sexual harassment lawsuit had already worked its way through the legal system and produced a judgment exceeding $200,000 against the business. When the conversation with investigators turned to how firearms had been managed in the past, what came back was more alarming. Employees said earlier gun-related content had involved unloaded weapons or had required anyone nearby to move away before live ammunition was used. On the day Curtis died, that hadn't been the practice. Witnesses also described Wayne handling firearms carelessly on prior occasions, with employees reportedly being flagged by the barrel more than once. Attributed to witnesses. To those who had worked there, this was not a single catastrophic error in an otherwise safe environment. It was the product of a workplace where people had learned not to speak up, and where Curtis may never have truly felt he had the option to refuse.
Issues mentioned with the firearm at all today?
No, I would say Wayne's the issue. He doesn't know how to handle a gun.
Okay.
Clearly. He just should have been more prepared and not had that gun loaded. He made a very, very bad decision, and he'll pay for it.
I thought they would never use live rounds. I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, if it was me, I would have used like a CO2 pistol.
When Wayne sees and thinks something or thinks that something is a good idea, for example, this tragic thing that happened to an incredible human being, you've got to be dumb. You literally have to be out of your mind to think that that was a good idea. Curtis would have said the same thing. He and any person in their right mind knows that you never let a gun get pointed at you. If Curtis had a choice, he would not have been standing in the line of that gun. I know for